the Chinese Empire. Beyond it, the Silk Road merchants traveled into barrenness. This is where the Great Wall ends too, after coming more than 2,000 miles from the Pacific. I believe it was built to keep the Chinese in as much as the nomads out. Less a real barrier, but a kind of definition, something the Chinese love, a line between order and chaos. It seems rather pitiful from here, just baked earth. The last gateway used to be covered with the poems of exiled officials, scratched here in despair before they were forced into the wilderness. People still call it China's mouth. Within the mouth, they used to say, was all civilization. Outside spread barbarism.
它戈壁很大，沙漠
有沙漠。
它这个在阿克苏那片是挨着塔格拉玛干大沙漠的边沿走，
左边有沙漠，
所以说没有人烟。
沙漠和戈壁都是。
对，沙漠和戈壁多一些。
Chinese still regard going beyond the wall as a kind of exile.
我到哪儿去啊？我到喀什。
喀什，你的家庭在哪？
家在洛阳。
在洛阳。
我们工作一般也不算很辛苦，就是离家远一点。离家远，每年有2个月的休假，2个月休假可以回家。
所以每年你有2个月，
每年
多少？
每年走这么一趟，每年一趟。
所以你分开了大部分
时间
很多的时间你分居的，
分居，
这个很困难的情况，对不对？
那这就是解放军里面好多这种情况，因为要有当兵的，要有在家的，这是咱们不是说这个官话的，反正这个条件就是这样，条件就是这样。
I felt unbearably privileged among these people. Most of them don't want to live out here at all. They or their parents were sent from the eastern cities during political campaigns in the 50s and 60s. Some volunteered, but most had no choice. I was entering the far northwest province of Xinjiang, huger than France, Germany and Italy combined. It was childishly exciting. This was the hinterland of demons and nomads, which the Chinese feared. If you hunted on the map for the most landlocked spot in the world, the arms of your compass would intersect here. The rail diverged at a dusty oasis town, and I went on by road. A few buses take farmers and workers and the occasional traveller between oases. They're still a bit like frontier towns. The buses are their lifeline, and any official is a little king. 谢谢你啊。If If you leave a place like this at dawn, you'll probably reach the next oasis at dusk. The old camel caravans would have taken 2 weeks. But suddenly, I was amongst a new people. They were not native Chinese, but Muslims, Turkic farmers and traders. I felt a shock of recognition, as if I'd left China altogether for the Middle East. They were burlier than the Chinese, sometimes pale-eyed. They seemed more colorful and sensuous. It was these people's ancestors who for hundreds of years made the Silk Road work. But the road's half deserted now. It has been in decline for 6 centuries, its people isolated in a cul-de-sac.
不是，这个是苏联的地图，是新疆的地图啊。英国没有，英国没有。看到英国，这是苏联，英国是苏联的西边是在这个，很西边，西边啊，西边都是这是个东边，苏联的西边，对，西边在这，对，可是英国是。
It's not surprising Britain's unknown here. The Silk Road moves from one oasis to the next, between the Taklamakan Desert to the south and the Tian Mountains, which fill the horizon along the Russian border for 1,000 miles. These are the foothills of the Tian Shan, the mountains of heaven. They haunt the Silk Road all the way to Kashgar. They are like no China I have ever seen. It was from these uplands that the nomads used to filter down and attack the rich Silk Road caravans. And I found them still here, semi-nomadic horse and cattle breeders in their summer pastures. I always sympathize with wanderers instead of settlers, and these remote grasslands are a perfect haven for us. The people are Kazakhs, Turkic tribesmen, living the nomadic life which the oasis Muslims below had given up 800 years before. This is Buzkashi, a tug-of-war between 2 teams over decapitated goat carcass. The skill is to carry it around the valley unmolested and return it to base. These Kazakhs live all summer in yurt tents, 1,000 feet above their winter valleys. On the surface, I thought how marvelous, the ultimately non-Chinese way of life, a people living with the mobility of their herds. Once in the 60s, the Chinese organized them into communes, but in the last 10 years, they'd reverted to their tribal ways. How much did they still value their freedom, I wondered. Did they despise the towns below? But my Chinese had to be interpreted into Kazakh.
Bunun yeni farkı Hansu halkı menен bizim halkımızın tili okşamaydı. Turmuştan ocağında da okşamaydı, farkı var. Kalada bolgandan keyin turmuşta ança köp can kıynalatınday kıyınçılık yok. Bizde mine жерде malda bolgandan keyin kış bolsa katты. Jaz bolsun malda ayda bir багатыныш kıyınçılık var. Osундай. Iş koy endi. Malda kıştan ötküzүү kıyınçılık, kıyın iş koyul. Otorlatamız tauga, koyga otorlatamız. Kem çöp alıp beremiz, osuma çıgaramız mal kıştan.
Bana verin ben orada.
Bana ver değil mi?
Cır.
Verebilirim mi?
El atla. Ne verir? Seni balaların oku bitirip hizmetke ornalaşsa deydi. Kalada ornalaşkan jakсы bulama, ona tauda ornalaşkan jakсы bulama deydi. Son kayısın temir.
Kalada ornaşkan jakсы. Kala ornalaşsa teknikası jogarı bolat. Mine жерде bolsa mal menen кетет. Bilim ala almayt.
Bunun tatsız bir şey de. Rahat mı
Sen bana kalada turmuş ötküzüğü kalay mısın deydi.
Kalayımız koy.
Is this, I wonder, the beginning of their end? Perhaps the Muslims now settled in their oasis of the Silk Road below had spoken the same way 800 years before. But now, the lure of these Chinese-dominated towns is even greater, though the Kazakhs may secretly despise it. For no two people could be less alike.
ما شو اسمه ما ما انت اسمه طريقة
The road goes empty for mile after mile. Its desolation's hypnotic. It was along this way that Buddhism first reached China, and even in early Christianity. So did spices, Roman glass, and a mass of new fruits and vegetables. While to the west, beside silk, went paper making and gunpowder, astronomy, flowers and shrubs. But for the moment, there's nothing along it but stone-littered sand, formless oases, graveyards, and here and there a wayside eating place for the lorry drivers carrying coal or timber.
从哈市到北京拉面。
得多少钱呢？
北京到哈市跑一趟是出塞费嘛是40块，一天嘛平均的是一天是10块，这是出塞费。
所以你允许吗？
云是面。
His daily wage would buy 10 meals like this.
你是哪个国家的？
我是英国人。
啊，英国人啊。
你知不知道英国在哪？
不知道。
英国是。
你英国搞啥意思？
英国是苏联的西边，小的岛。
那英国在搞啥工作呢？
我是作家。这个我写的小说 我不知道用中文怎么说，可是我也写流行的说，我是个敌人，没有共产。
你有没有萝卜？
有什么？萝卜。
萝卜有没有？
萝卜是什么？
是你儿子嘛？
儿子。
你家是有没有娃娃？你结婚了没有呢？
没有。我有女朋友。
女朋友有没有？
没有。
也没有。
你结婚了没有？
结婚了。
有没有儿子？
有四个娃娃。
四个娃娃。很多。男的还是女的？
男的，4个都男的。
太多。
I came to a cliffside riddled with more than 200 cave shrines. Buddhism reached here from India as early as the 1st century, and these, at Kizil, were scooped out more than 1,000 years ago, when the Silk Road oases formed miniature Buddhist kingdoms. Their monks, apparently, grew rich as landowners and moneylenders. The monks used to process clockwise through these ambulatories, which were dedicated to the passing of the Buddha into nirvana. The 3rd century frescoes are the oldest of their kind in China, with no trace of Chinese influence, only Indian. The walls are covered with scenes of the Buddha's life and from previous incarnations in which he'd sacrificed himself. They seem at once delicate and savage. In this quiet valley, the monks seem to have thought their world would last forever. For centuries, the community had gone on painting its shrines with the same Buddhas and Apsara angels, as if repetition made them true. But in the 12th century, Islam arrived with the sword, and the monasteries died. I found many of the frescoes defaced, not only by Muslim fanatics, but by Red Guards. But most sickening of all, the German archaeologist von Lecoq sawed out whole panels in 1906. Many of his spoils were deposited in Berlin and destroyed by Allied bombing in the Second World War. There was something moving about this monastery now. Its monks had lived here as if they were constructing paradise. But what they created had only been defaced as heresy or abducted as art. I felt a foolish pity for them. In my bus, the Turkic Muslims are mixed with Chinese. With every mile westward, the differences between them seem to deepen. They have no love for one another. With the Chinese amounting to 6 million in the province now, the Muslims may soon be outnumbered. But the Chinese immigrants themselves don't want to be here.
我过去工作，我是大连赵团长的，经过58年调到新疆来的。
50年代的
啊
，60年代
啊，50年代调到新疆来，调到新疆来了完了以后，赵团长和中苏关系破裂以后，不供应材料了，说赵团长垮了以后我就下学开车了。
所以你不是你必须当设计吗？
说要来到新疆已经30年了。
很困难的。这个你现在你想回去吗？
我想回去，现在想回去嘛，有户口落不下。
没有办法。
没有办法。
这是你的孩子，比方说他们觉得他们现在口外人了，是新疆人了。娃娃现在嘛也很想回去嘛以后嘛，现在嘛没有办法就不能回去，就在新疆待着，回新疆知道，回去以后。
The Chinese have been ordered west by their government ever since the 50s and before. Some still volunteer for temporary labor at high wages, but the majority are forced. They despise the local Muslims and hate the conditions. In 1967, millions of Red Guards were banished here. Among all these exiles, some have found their way back east, but most can never return. The Chinese say that the falling leaf returns to the root of the tree, that it is good to die where you were born. But these did not. Often, they'd simply been buried by their work unit, their families too far away. Some of their headstones, in homesickness, face east, back to the motherland.
Li Kai-ming, born in Nanjing, Jiangsu province, 1949. Died 1974 on July the 23rd, at the age of 25, in the collapse of a flooded mine. Kashgar Anti-Revisionist Mine Unit. Comrade She Shangui, born 1933 in Henan, sadly died in a work accident, aged 48. He was a driver of this second construction company. Ji Feng, in defense of Chairman Mao's revolutionary line, gave up his life gloriously on the 22nd of February, 1969, Xinjiang Pioneer Construction Corps.
This whole road is haunted for me by the desert to the south. It has smothered complete cities, and its heat and sands make anything man-made look transient. It's the westernmost extension of the Gobi, and the Silk Road has always skirted round it, north and south. The urge to see it, a planless curiosity, at last became unbearable. I sometimes wonder why I have to do this sort of thing. I always feel there's something to be discovered out there. But in fact, it's the nothingness that's so fascinating. I reached a community of Muslim herdsmen and wheat farmers. The people were all Turkic Uyghur, who are most at home here. They're easy to warm to. While the Chinese try to impose system on the land, the Uyghur seem to adapt to it. But the only beasts to negotiate the desert would be camels, and they are not easy to come by. To these people, the desert's something to avoid.
是不是在这个村子有一个看骆驼人，一个人吃什么的？不同上了在哪？在这个上吗？上吗？在这个地方有一个看骆驼的。
They had very few camels. In fact, they seemed to have little of anything, and they scarcely spoke Mandarin.
上吗？在哪？在这个这个那个骆，看着你说普通话？那个骆走路一个。 就是因为我们拍电影啊，所以你
This has been called the worst and most dangerous desert on earth. The Uyghur call it Taklamakan, which means you enter and you never return. It's a howling wilderness, 600 miles long by 250 miles wide. European explorers almost all shunned it. Its day-long hurricanes, which the Muslims call black winds, buried whole caravans and left their soldiers' and merchants' bodies mummified in the sands. Even camels would rather be somewhere else. The image of a camel caravan may be romantic, but the beasts themselves are thoroughly humiliating to travel with. Ours resented us. They snapped their head ropes, they bit and spat gobs of green froth. But I couldn't help liking them. Their independence is near perfect. They can march for 2 weeks without water and only start to sweat mildly in a temperature at which a man would be dead. This is the terrain, shadeless and dehydrating, which the old caravan trains most feared. The lead camel had lacerated my guide's shin. They were expert kickers and biters. But for some reason, I went on liking them. I think it was their utter indifference. The drop in temperature at sunset is sudden, and the fall of night even faster. The silence is awesome, and the solitude. It's odd to have come all the way to China and to be most moved by emptiness. In sharp temperature changes, especially at night, the shifting dunes make ghostly, musical noises, and people still say they're inhabited by demons. This wilderness, I think, was the natural creator of the Muslim Uyghur, with their belief in the littleness of man before God. The rice fields of eastern China might belong on another planet. My bus on to Kashgar was filled by Uyghur. China seems to have petered out altogether, and we almost in the Middle East. Kashgar. I'd imagined it a city in legend as much as in geography. At the turn of the century, it was the nub of the great game, played by the Russians, British and Chinese for control of Central Asia. And who would have guessed that the Chinese would win? In its inns and consulates, explorers, archaeologists and spies had all intermingled.
However,
90% of its people are Turkic Muslims, and it reminds me of an Afghan town rather than any Chinese one. A medley of silks are still bartered here. Chinese silks on the eastern seaboard and some locally made, Pakistani silks and Russian silks from Soviet Central Asia.
请问，这个从哪来的？这个是苏联做的。苏联。
Çin的。
Is Uzbek.
Ya Özbek yok, Şincan
The favorites, ironically, are silks woven in Soviet Uzbekistan and imported by Pakistanis.
比中国的线是厚一点。
不一点的，苏联的嘛，皮的。Yes。
很好看。1米多少钱？对。
苏联做的。苏联做的30块。
这个巴基斯坦做的。
巴基斯坦做的1米20块。
20块。这个中国做的。
中国做的10块。
10块啊，这个便宜一点。
便宜。看面。
看面啊。谢谢。这个和建做的。这个新疆做的。
这个中国做上海。
上海
做的。
You're learning English.
English, yes.
How are you getting on? My name is Rene.
My name is Rene. My name is Osman.
Osman.
How do you do?
Yeah.
How do you do? You are from?
From England.
What's your name?
Colin.
What day is today?
It is Friday. Today is Friday.
What day was today?
Today is still Friday.
In the center, the 18-meter-high statue of Mao Zedong went up in 1966 at the start of the Cultural Revolution. Recently, a plan by local authorities to blow it up only threatened the buildings nearby, and when they tried to saw it down, they found it was reinforced with steel. In a city of Muslims who abhor any human image, it's a double insult. But Maoism is a forsaken religion, and nowhere more than here. There have been bloody anti-Chinese riots. It's in Islam that these people find their real nationhood.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
Every Friday, some 2,000 worshippers come to the central mosque from all over the oasis. It's the largest mosque in China. Peking is some 2,500 miles away. Afghanistan is less than 300. There could be no more powerful symbol of religious unity than this. But there was also, I think, something disquieting, the dedicated and uniform masculinity. Women are relegated to the gates, where worshippers make a show of spitting on the loaves and kettles they hold out. These are then considered blessed, and apparently hygienic, and carried back home to the sick. It's hard to believe that for a decade after 1966, during the Cultural Revolution, all the mosques were closed down or smashed. 7,000 people in the province were killed. And, as one of the imams told me, all open belief was suppressed.
你跟别的阿訇怎么样？
Bizim şu işimiz bilen bulduk. Dini faaliyetlerimizde öydürek elip bağdık. Az müddet. Ki aşkar elip bağdık. Bu vaktideki hareketler biz katlaşmadık. Biz işimiz öyle buldu.
This was the last great confrontation between the Chinese and the Muslims, between two of the world's most fiercely defended ideologies. It's a battle which, for the moment, nobody's won. If any two things express these Turkic people, they're the mosque and the horse. This man, Supi Chan, is the most respected horse dealer in the city. He knows everyone, and everybody seems to know him.
Lidang 马上任的时候，多少年？其实
40 yıl oldu dedi.
45 yıl oldu.
45 年。
45年。
45年。
15 yaşımdan tartıp şu at böyle ödleşken.
15岁开始嘛，他就买马，就是骑马，养马。
He can make a living by the purchase and sale of 4 horses a month. He not only buys and sells, but acts as a middleman between traders unable to reach agreement. If he's successful, he charges each 5%. I don't know a thing about horses, but I recognize him, the universal wheeler dealer.
Ben en kichkina at bağçaqlıqdan şimdi atamdan vaxtında şu kembeğel vaxtında at bağdı zanma yaxşı görüm atını. Müşkün qıça çıktı at bağı.
他看你看马的时候，都注意什么地方？
Traktörüme birinci çiş.
第一个嘛是看牙，
看你
牙。
İkincisi
ya
Türk'üne Türk'e.
第二个嘛就是看他的4个腿，
Üçüncüsü manda atın ten kuruluşu, kılıqı. Manda boz bulgan mayda. Manda boz bulgan muşu birinci sortluk atmış.
第4个呢就是
Birinci yorga, mengeş. Yorga mengeş varını 10 koy kalsa, yorga mengeş var karı soksakını 5 koy kalır. Şunda kılıp bağlaymış.
Bağlaymış. Ya 怎么样？
atla şunu çiğ.
Muş atın çiğ 7-8 yaş var. Uysuydu mu? Loğandı mı, ciğanız mı ya? Mandalam. Mandalam tüz burada. Yaşının ki çık buldu. Bırak baksın bana. Geçti. Bırışmışsa bırışmışsa. Yoğarak durdu şansına durdu. Anda konuşursa. Keserken amma.
On Sundays, more than 50,000 people descend on the horse market, as if celebrating their nomadic past. Not a single Chinese is to be seen. Here are the old talents of the Silk Road, bartering and mobility.
Bak 750 kok birem la.
Bakada bakmayız bakanda.
700 koy bo'lib da deslar.
Bo'lib deslar. Bu 800 köy oldu.
Bak 20 koy yuqori bas bo'lamda. Ha chiqimga chap chiqman, 20 koy.
Shu gapim shu aşağı kapalı.
Ha, mak 20 koy bas bo'lib bo'ldimi? 850 koy bo'limi?
Nasıl bize koydu?
50 koyib turam. Biz aldı körep, başkanım tat pulunuzu veremez.
Bulur. Maka.
Ekili kolunuzu yer bir soğuma. Bulup da.
Bulaptan lan
tekrar.
我什么徒弟啊？
Atne, koluk yer suğup lan bersek yeni varsın onu baydan kaydı. Sınıf durup koysa. Yer suğukandık kolunu yer nemi suğuka sattın sen deydi.
These stocky breeds originated in the Ili and Barkol regions on the Russian and Mongolian borders to the north. The Ili are docile, but the Barkol horses are close to those on which the Huns overran the Roman Empire. They can travel 100 miles a day, but the Chinese say the holes in their hearts are crooked, that they're wily and vicious. In all this concourse, nothing betrayed that I was in China. Instead, at last, I was in a community which seemed to belong perfectly to the old Silk Road. But my fascination isn't just nostalgia with the past. These Turkic people are virtually a nation on their own, unacknowledged. They're vigorous, clever, and naturally independent. With millions of others over the Russian border, they're an unknown power for the future. Westward, the newly metalled road enters the Pamir Mountains to join the Karakoram Highway from Pakistan. This Chinese lorry driver is taking the purchases of Pakistani traders to the frontier. Chinaware, cloth, and, he guessed, some contraband pearls.
你在这条路常常去旅行吗？
我经常去，一回跑3趟、4趟、2趟、1趟。跑多吗？多跑；跑少吗？少跑。把济南商人过来多吗？我们就多一点去；把济南商人过来少吗？我们就少一点去。
以前这条路危险吗？
以前路很危险的，
危险啊！
那经常不注意嘛，都会塌方。
网络的时候，
塌方嘛，就把路挡下来，过不去。还有嘛，有大树掉下来把车子砸坏。
China, Russia, Pakistan, Afghanistan all converge here, almost in each other's sight. It is the barren heart of Asia, the void I'd come to find. Silk Road merchants, afflicted by altitude sickness, used to categorize the high passes as big headache and small headache areas. The few nomads that do live here have to hibernate for half the year. This is where my journey ended, where the Silk Road leaves China. I'd come to where the Wakhan Corridor links China to Afghanistan, just 40 miles away. It's strange to end in such silence. Half the mountains of Asia converge here. The Chinese Tian Shan and Kunlun, the coldest in the world. The Karakoram of Pakistan, the Hindu Kush, invisible to the southwest. While in front of me, the Pamirs pointed the ancient road to its chain of cities westward. Samarkand, Palmyra, Damascus, to the sea. The road has united east and west, less with ideologies than with needs which might be even more lasting. Silk, paper, horses, gunpowder, roses.
In search of the bounty.
Before that,